live at the city's website, at the YouTube channel for the city, and also on Time Warner cable television at the city channel. And thank you also to the sponsoring neighborhoods. We had so many neighborhoods involved, starting with the SoFo neighborhood, which is south of Fountain, West Hollywood Central Neighborhood Association, West Hollywood Heights Neighborhood Association, West Hollywood Norma Triangle, North Neighborhood Association, West Hollywood Neighbors Association, West Hollywood South Neighborhood Association, and West Hollywood West Residents Association. And I missed my own, West Hollywood North Neighborhood Association. This evening has been generously underwritten by the Beverly Hills Greater Los Angeles Association of Realtors. Thanks to James Litz and all of the realtors for their help this evening. A big hand for them. And then last but not least, it's being co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Los Angeles. The ladies down front here have their famous time paddles, if you can hold them up and show everybody. The candidates will be told via the ladies' little timers how much time they have left in the question that they're being asked and have time to answer. At the stop, they will be asked to stop and turn the dais back to the moderator. This evening's forum will be held a bit more of a debate format, that since we have fewer candidates than we have had in the past, we have more leeway with time. Questions have been prepared by the sponsoring neighborhood associations and will include some answers submitted here by the audience. All the candidates will be allowed to answer all of the questions, and then each candidate will also be given time to respond as well, and there will be time limits on each of those. And now I am very happy to introduce our moderator for this evening, the president of the League of Women Voters Los Angeles, Catherine Ralston. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's Elizabeth Ralston. Okay, I'm delighted to be here tonight and to see so many of you here in the audience, and also to welcome those of you who are watching on TV now or watching sometime in the future on the YouTube channel or on the city's website. I think Lynn has given you the outline of the format pretty carefully. It's a forum, by and large. That is, the candidates do not speak directly to each other, but are speaking directly to the audience. But we are going to have plenty of time for the candidates to respond to other candidates' answers. And we will have an opportunity in the middle of the forum for candidates to ask each other questions. With that said, we can begin. When I ask a question, I will tell how much time is allowed for that question, which in general will be somewhere between 30 seconds and 60 seconds. Each candidate will then have that amount of time to answer the question, and then we will have a second round in which each candidate will have a chance to respond to the other candidate, what's been said previously, to the other candidates' answers if they would like. And the time limit on the second round will be 30 seconds. So let me begin with the first question. In West Hollywood City Municipal Code, the Historic Preservation Ordinance states that the character, history, and spirit of the city are correct, I'm sorry. Yes, I skipped something very important, which is the opening statements. And every candidate will be allowed 90 seconds for his or her opening statement, and we will start with Ms. Schenk right here.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you to our moderator, Elizabeth Ralston, and to the West Hollywood Neighborhoods Association for putting on this forum. Thanks to all of you for being here and being engaged in our election. My name is Heidi Schenk. I'm a proud 21-year resident of West Hollywood. I'm running for city council because after the change the last election brought us, we cannot go back to struggling with the same old problems, using the same old ideas and hoping for different results. Year after year, we've been talking about reckless development, excessive traffic, lack of parking, and more rent control evictions. And year after year, these problems continue to get worse. Now is the time when we can change all that. This election gives us an urgent choice. Will we go back to the way of the past, or will we finally look to the future and have a community council that listens and responds to we, the residents, and our concerns? I'm the only East Side candidate running, and I'll give a voice to the East Side residents who have never had representation on council while serving the needs of the entire city. And I want to save and celebrate our history and historic buildings. I will bring innovative and sensible ideas to the council, and I look forward to sharing those ideas with you throughout this forum tonight. Thank you very much.
And now I'm going to insert one other request, which is that we hold our applause to the end, because if we have applause after each candidate speaks or in the middle, then that takes away time from the candidates to give their answers. Okay, so Mr. Ettman.
Thank you very much. My name is Cole Ettman, and I'm running for City Council. I want to thank the sponsors for putting on this very important program this evening. I moved to West Hollywood, and I found my home. I got involved in local government, and soon after, Jeffrey Prang appointed me as a Public Facilities Commissioner. I'm running for office because I started to see things that just didn't seem right, you know, like not kosher. It's not right to me that special interests and big-pocketed developers are dictating our future and the direction of our city. Since when don't we, the residents, you, the residents, come first? Not since the creation of our city has West Hollywood voters have an opportunity like this to clearly define the future of our city. If you feel the existing system is working for you, then by all means, you know who to vote for, Mr. John Heilman. But if you feel that we are being ignored by our city, by our government, then it's time for change. If you are tired of not being able to park in your own neighborhood or having to cut through traffic in front of your own house, it's time for a change. And if you are ashamed, as I am, about a city government consumed in scandal and paying hand-picked political appointees, employees hundreds of thousands of dollars, double and triple more than what we pay teachers, firefighters, police officers, then it's time we step in and restore the confidence in our government. If you agree with me that the time for change has long gone, I would be honored to have your support on Election Day. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Larry Block. Thank you to the neighborhood group for putting on this debate, and I'd like to note that good faith campaign reform begins with a set of debates, and I'm very disappointed that the Chamber of Commerce chose not to have a debate this time. But they said they didn't have the resources, but they certainly have the resources to put together and fund and work a lot of energy to fund John Heilman's campaign. This campaign, I hope to get to know all of you a little bit better than last time. It was hard to break through 12 candidates. And I always wanted to run for this open Prang seat, but last campaign was not a time to sit out. Two candidates sat out from the debate, but politics, the city, the issues, they're an everyday thing. And I've been working every day at many meetings, from public safety to rent stabilization, with ideas, working with our boards and commissioners to make a difference in the community. In this election, we're not electing a governor of the city to balance our books. We're not electing a city manager. We're not electing a pope that we all have to follow. We're electing one councilman that needs to work best with the other 4 councilmen. And I feel we need an independent voice on the city council, somebody who can forge a new majority and a new middle for our city council so that all your voices can be heard. And I think I am the best person to represent the independent voices of this city. Stop. Thank you.
Mr. Heilman.
Thank you. Thank you to Lynn and to the neighborhood groups, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you all for being here tonight, and everyone who's watching at home. I'm a 35-year resident of the city of West Hollywood, and I've dedicated 30 years of my life to making West Hollywood a wonderful place. I am very proud of what we've accomplished in the city of West Hollywood during our first 30 years, building this facility, building parking structures, expanding social services, funding really strong law enforcement, our rent control ordinance, our affordable housing. But this election, as some of the other candidates has indicated, is not about the past, it's about the future. And I'm so excited about the future of West Hollywood. I'm excited about the opportunity that we now have to bring mass transit to the city of West Hollywood. I'm very excited about the opportunity that we have to build a new recreation facility here at West Hollywood Park and expand our park space. I'm excited about joining the city of LA in raising the minimum wage in the city of West Hollywood. I'm also excited about the opportunity to further protect and actually expand affordable housing in the city of West Hollywood. So I remain committed to the city. I love the city, and if you do too, I hope you'll support me on June 2nd. Thank you.
Okay, and now let's try to hold the pause till the end of the forum. Okay. In West Hollywood's municipal code, the Historic Preservation Ordinance states that the character, history, and spirit of the city are reflected in its historic structures and areas of significance. In the face of increasing pressure of modernization, our potential cultural resources are threatened with alteration, demolition, or removal. Do you believe that the city has done an effective job of preservation as so described in the municipal code? If so, please cite specific examples of success. And if not, what new initiatives would you propose if elected? Please give specific examples. And this is a question with a 60-second answer initially.
Does it start with
And
me?
we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's a great question, and I don't believe that we've done as much as we can do. The municipal code states that we should be preserving, and yet Mr. Heilman actually voted to demolish Plummer Park, one of our great two buildings, Long Hall and Great Hall, that represent the architecture and the integrity of the core of what this city is really all about. I actually worked with a group of activists, and they should really take the credit, Kathy Blavis and Stephanie Harker, who got a last-minute stay on the demolishment after those buildings were set to be demolished. And it exemplifies the hubris that has come to this previous city council, which is to actually tear down the very soul and the very nature of what West Hollywood stands for, not just from an architectural point of view, but what those buildings, the history that those buildings hold. I would absolutely strengthen our zoning codes as soon as I got into office to make sure, that our historical buildings were preserved for the next generation and on.
Mr. Ettman.
Preserving historic sites should be a priority for the city, and it hasn't been. There have been numerous occasions where buildings have come up to the council, and the council, once again, do not put the people first. A large group of you went to the state and federal government to say that Great Hall, Long Hall should be deemed historic. And it's no arduous process. The state and federal government stated Great Hall and Long Hall should be saved. I sat on the commission when the council brought us to only two options: pack up the building, put it in storage, or spend almost $2 million and move the buildings to another side of the park. When are we going to be put first? Adaptive reuse comes first. We need to leave those buildings in place and implement adaptive reuse. We need to do it there, we need to do it at the factory, and we need to do it in a comprehensive plan across the city.
I'm sorry that I don't actually agree that we've done a terrible job of preserving our resources. The city is 30 years old. We're a fairly young city, and there are things that go on in the city that we're just getting around to. If you talk about our other things, T intersections, since the cityhood started, we haven't even gotten forward to fix our T intersections. We're 30 years old. We're just getting it together to protect the treasures that are important. With Great Hall, Long Hall, Mr. Hallman did not single-handedly vote to knock down that building, or the question the city council had to raise was how to use the state dollars, the $26 million, so they came up with a plan to utilize that money. The money fell through, and I walked with Kathy to protect Plummer Park, and I advocate. I'm the only member on this dais that's a member of the West Hollywood Preservation Alliance, and I advocate that we get ahead of the curve so that we can locate our natural treasures and protect them above and beyond state or federal ordinances of preservation.
Mr. Heilman.
Thank you. Some people seem to forget that I actually initiated the Historic Preservation Ordinance in the city of West Hollywood when we first adopted it. And I think people are forgetting that the city of West Hollywood is a city of less than 2 square miles, and we have designated a lot of properties. You can look along Fountain, you can look along Harper. There are some beautiful historic properties really deserving of preservation that have been kept. But when you preserve somebody's property or declare it historic, you are necessarily limiting that property owner's options, and it is something that should not be undertaken lightly. When we go through this process of evaluating whether something is historic or not, we have to make sure that we actually have the evidence to support declaring that property historic. And that is something that we have actually done throughout the city in numerous places.
Hey, you finished on time. Great. So now each of the candidates has 30 seconds to respond or comment on the previous answers, and please try to keep it to 30 seconds.
Initiating an ordinance and applying it are two different things. And so I take strong disagreement with Mr. Heilman's answer. The fact is that those buildings were coming down. There was a vote put to the city council, and Mr. Heilman, and actually it doesn't matter what the other council members, they're not up here today. If they were, I'd be saying the same thing to them, voted to demolish those buildings. These are historic structures, and this is just emblematic of the discretion that the previous council has used to get around that ordinance.
Time's up.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, Mr. Hetman.
Yeah, Larry, Mr. Block, you're wrong, because John Heilman and John Duran introduced a motion right after the good citizens of West Hollywood went and got these buildings deemed historic to demolish the buildings within 90 days. That's not good government, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change the culture at City Hall.
I advocate for keeping Long Hall and Great Hall. I advocate for a process that allows that the community stakeholders have a say in what happens, like Tara, like the West Hollywood Park visioning process, and that's the side I've stood on. The stakeholders should be able to come up with the plan. When those buildings were coming down, that was all Protect Plummer Park wanted, a fair process. The process was broken. And the process is not an ideology. It's a process to let today's stakeholders decide what the future is for our city.
Mr. Heilman.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about some specific examples of properties that we have preserved. The Charlie Hotel on Sweetser, the building on Sunset where Katana is located, numerous buildings on Harper, and the city has granted lots of buildings in the city Mills Act contracts, which gives them tax breaks so that they can help maintain those historic structures. So I don't think that we can agree on every property in the city, but the suggestion that the city hasn't protected historic resources is false.
Okay, thank you. And now let me remind the audience that the time to submit any questions you might want to have answered is now, right up here. Okay, the next question, and this time we will start the answers with Mr. Ettman. Many cite that the attraction of West Hollywood for both residents and visitors is the character provided by the small, unique businesses and the walkability of commercial areas. Do you feel that it is important to encourage these small and neighborhood-serving businesses in West Hollywood? If so, what will you do to incentivize small businesses? And if not, what is your vision for our business community?
This is a great question. If you talk to some of the small business owners in West Hollywood, the owners of Yogurt Stop that we all go to, V Wine Room. They'll tell you City Hall is just a roadblock. They'll tell you that they had to wait a year to get an operating permit in order to start their business. We don't open the gates to small business. We open the gates to we open it to big business, to big developers, big projects. I want to keep the character of the neighborhood that we have, that it was founded on 30 years ago. We need to have a program where if you live in West Hollywood and you want to start a business in West Hollywood, we are there for you. We help you do that. We give you incentives. Enough is enough. It's time to help the little guy.
Well, I'm a little guy. I got a store right up the street, and I know all the problems firsthand with getting through process, and blanket statements like we don't protect the little guy is completely wrong. It doesn't take a year to get through planning. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to get through planning if you want to build a dressing room, and I've advocated that we add a person in the planning department where we just don't stay in the queue if we have a plan to build a dressing room. You go in the queue versus having a small business planner on site to expedite small business. The parking situation is hurt. Free Sunday parking, Mickey's happy hours down 50%, Yogurt Stop, I was talking to them today, how bad their business is down. Everybody will be at the June 2nd meeting when we talk about parking and small business. But there's a lot of things, including special event permit fees that have doubled, and now they're being increased again. And special event permit fees alone take away from the business and the attraction of what the community represents. There's so much more on this answer, including the bid and the Merchants Association, but I'm out of time. I hope to get to it later.
Mr. Heilman.
Yeah, I think that there are things that we have already done. Widening the sidewalks in places, that makes it attractive for businesses. We already are one of the most walkable cities in the western part of the United States. I think we also need to look at our zoning ordinance, and as new development occurs and replacement development, we need to make sure that there are smaller spaces set aside rather than one large space in the new development. We need to look at, as Larry said, how do we make it easier for businesses to have special events, to have outdoor dining. We need to review the permit structure as well as the process for that to make sure that we aren't discouraging small business. But again, I think the premise that we aren't friendly to small business is incorrect. We actually have a lot of new businesses start up in West Hollywood, and a lot of businesses want to expand in West Hollywood.
Well, Mr. Heilman, you may be tone deaf then to what small businesses are saying. In fact, I have very specific things that I will do when I'm on city council to improve small businesses in our city. The first thing that we could do is a facade improvement program. It's been tested in cities across the country. In Orlando, in fact, they gave $40,000. The city invested $40,000, and they got a $2.5 million return in revenues on that investment. We should also have a business district plan, particularly on the east side, to revitalize that part of Santa Monica Boulevard so that the east side becomes a new sort of main street and continues what is going on the west side onto the east side. And finally, we must reduce the hours of parking. Our restaurants are hurting, Yogurt Stop is hurting, our nightlife district is hurting because the 12 o'clock hours, they are reporting to us that it is just killing their businesses. It is time for us to change the policies of the past and move forward into the future.
Okay, and now everybody has 30 seconds to comment. Mr. Ettman?
How can a small business succeed in West Hollywood when there is no place to park? That's our job, to provide an infrastructure so that small businesses can succeed. If somebody is going to decide what city to go to have lunch in the afternoon, it's not West Hollywood, it's Beverly Hills, it's Culver City, because they built an infrastructure that makes it convenient for people to come, work, play, eat, and enjoy that city. Change the zoning, Mr. Heilman. Why did you vote for Movietown Plaza? Why did you vote for Sunset Millennium? These are big business projects.
With regards to small business, There was a question when the city council wanted to do away with the business improvement district and they weren't going to finance anymore. I stood up at that podium and I said, give me a chance to put the business improvement district together as a merchants association. Because the business improvement district did not work because we could not go east of Robertson and get the support of 51% of the businesses. We need a merchants association to tie all of the businesses together so that we can send out a joint letter to all our citizens and let them all know what's going on in our city. There is so much more
your
to talk
time is
about
up.
the subject.
Your time's up.
Well, I would just say a few things. First of all, I thought we weren't supposed to engage in personal attacks on other candidates. I guess that rule's been thrown out. I did not vote for the Millennium. I lived too close to it, so I was recused on that project. In terms of parking, we have 400 parking spaces that we built here that serve a lot of the local businesses. We have a structure on Kings Road that we built. We have parking spaces that we've added up on Sunset. We have a number of surface lots that we added on the east side. So this notion that the city isn't producing parking is incorrect.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
The one thing that I wanted to add to this conversation is the fact that traffic is actually killing our small businesses as well. I cannot tell you how many business owners have said to me that the traffic itself is discouraging people from coming and shopping in West Hollywood. If the policies of the past, and by the way, this is not a personal attack, this is attacking policies, and we are allowed to actually look at what has been voted on a record that has proven to be a failure for the community of this city in certain areas, and that's what we're talking about. We need to improve traffic so they could get to our businesses.
Time's up.
Excuse me, moderator, can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Can you please call our name when we're about to start as we
Sure, I
go
will.
through instead of
Yes.
just picking it up? Thanks.
Yeah, okay, I will certainly do that. Next question, and this time we'll start with Mr. Block. West Hollywood residents have the ability to create preferential parking districts which restrict parking to residents only. What steps, if any, do you think the council should take to provide more parking for visitors who patronize our city's businesses? And this is a 30-second round, both first and second time. So you have 30 seconds to answer and 30 seconds to respond later.
Well, one thing I've advocated is an all-city parking pass that allows city residents to eat, shop, and play West Hollywood. So if you can park in all the West Hollywood garages, you'll frequent, for free, you will frequent the local businesses. I've stood up against inadequate notice, the towaway traps, parking. Last year when they moved the meters from inadequate notice from July till September because I pointed out of the inadequate notice of that. And there's so much more we can do. Rolling back the meters, free Sunday parking, but the all-city parking pass will help small business and will help local residents eat, shop, and play West Hollywood.
Mr. Heilman.
I think that we need to look at what we're already doing, which is shared parking, where we're taking unused commercial spaces and making those available for businesses and patrons. I think we need to be looking at what we're doing behind City Hall with an automated parking structure, seeing if that works, if we can expand it to other areas of the city, particularly in some of our residential areas where there's been long time shortage of parking in those districts because the apartments weren't built with adequate parking at the time.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, I think that all new developments, whether they're commercial or residential, should have adequate parking to the needs. In other words, if there are a certain amount of residents, it should be the equal amount that they should be able to park and their guests. And if it's commercial, it should be enough to handle the consumers that go and frequent those stores. Next, I think that we should have parking holidays. They have it in other cities. They work very well. It really incentivizes people to go to small businesses. We must reduce our punitive parking fines, and we should extend our parking permits program.
So the real issue here that everyone's forgetting about is this is because of overdevelopment. This is because there are multiple projects on multiple streets with zoning laws that allow for little or no parking. That's what needs to change. If you look at Kings Road and you look at the cumulative effects on Kings Road, we're not putting the neighborhood first. We're not putting the community who lives on Kings Road first. We have to take care of the people who live here in order to take care of the people who are visiting us. We must build parking garages.
Okay,
Uh,
let's see, where are we? The next question has to do with the, what?
No rebuttals.
Oh, I'm sorry, second rebuttal, yes.
My turn? You're going to call our names as we go. We have plenty of parking. It's very crowded on the weekends. There's so many unused spaces. The red building just went online with parking. I don't know, this notion that we have no parking in the city is really a residential problem because some of the residents have no parking. But our city is fed with 30 to 40,000 tourists every weekend that come into the city, and they find plenty of parking. So we need more parking for residents. Perhaps on the east side, we could build a parking garage on Fountain near Plummer Park, and we talked about alleviating some of the parking problems there. 30 seconds goes quick. Okay, thanks.
I would disagree with Larry in part. There are residential neighborhoods that for a long time have been deficient in parking. If you go on Laurel north of Fountain or Havenhurst or any of those streets up there, they're at 95, 100% occupancy. And those areas have always been like that because of the existing apartment buildings were built many years ago. They're beautiful buildings, but they have no parking. I think that's where the city could step in and look at opportunities to build automated structures in those neighborhoods.
Yeah, to suggest that there's an adequate amount of parking in West Hollywood, I think everyone in here would find that just an untrue statement. So I say again that we need to make sure that all future developments, because that how we use our land determines exactly what our traffic and our parking problems are. Every new structure that comes in must have adequate parking from here on in. And we should reduce our parking tickets because they are punitive. People feel that they cannot park in the commercial districts for that reason. And I have a stop.
Our council has put big development and big projects ahead of parking for residents and visitors. We could have built parking garages where they need to be on the boulevard, like they do in other cities. We can do that. It's a sacrifice, but it's time that we do that. We all know that we're short on parking. We all know that people who live on Kings Road and many other roads cannot park. I have been walking door to door in this city, and finding a parking spot has not been easy. It's time to make the changes.
Okay. The next question has to do with zoning variances, or actually bonuses, I guess. The current general plan allows developers to receive multiple bonuses. For example, a bonus for affordable housing, and green building, and mixed use. These bonuses together allow the buildings to exceed otherwise allowable height and density limits. Do you think that multiple bonuses should be allowed, and why or why not? And we'll begin with Mr. Heilman. This is a 60-second question, so everybody has 60 seconds, and then 30 seconds for the response.
I think we have problems right now, and the big problem is that state law now allows developers to get a bonus for affordable housing. When we adopted the general plan, we weren't certain exactly how that was going to work, and it's clear now that that needs to be looked at, because when you combine that bonus with others, it is producing unintended consequences. It's producing buildings that are larger and more dense than we had anticipated. So I think that's one thing that we need to look at to address the issue of development. But I also think we need to replicate what we did in West Hollywood West, where we adopted design guidelines, and we had the residents and developers sit together and develop guidelines for new development that were not perfect, but I think most people felt like their issues had been heard, and they understood the need for people to replace existing buildings in some instances, but to replace them with buildings that fit within the character.
The state law, SB 1818, actually can be mitigated by city ordinances, which should have been done previously, and I will do when I get on city council. These bonuses are ways for big developers to create a loophole whereby and it becomes fuzzy math because we take down a building that has 20 affordable units and maybe we put in 3. So 17 people are getting lost in the cracks. These bonuses, the density that's coming to our city because of that is literally over-consuming us. Our infrastructure cannot handle these bonuses. We, the residents, are paying the price. We, as a council, can actually do something to mitigate it. It should have been done 6 weeks ago, 6 months ago, or 6 years ago, but unfortunately, it has been left derelict.
I have to agree with Heidi. The city ordinances can do better. We can do better than what the state guidelines are. You know, the council and John Heilman voted on the general plan in 2011, which upzoned a lot of this city. Because of that, when you add in the density bonuses, you can have buildings next door to you that are 2 times the size of what's currently there. What are we doing? Why are we changing the face of our neighborhood? It's time to make the changes to protect the neighborhood and protect our urban village.
Yes, Mr. Block.
SB 18 allows developers for 2 bonuses. It's at their discretion. It is not at our discretion. It is compulsory that developers who take a plot of land build up to 90% of that land. It's law. That's the rules. So 90%. So we could shave off a little bit, but 90% of it is by law. As far as the double bonuses, because we have our own local our own local zoning codes that allow SB 18 to add it on top of ours, this became a fault line in the last 826 meeting, because they were going to do in lieu payments to take affordable housing off of that project and put them somewhere else. This probably is the greatest discussion that's going to unravel right now at the fault line of 826 is what we think about affordable housing. Are we going to allow these double bonuses? Are we going to go back to not providing maximum affordable housing in the city? And that's the next big question that will come up soon.
Okay, and now we have time for 30-second responses. Mr. Heilman?
I do want to correct something that Cole said. When we adopted the general plan, we adopted it after many, many years of work and many, many community meetings. We had lots of public input, and we actually didn't upzone the areas. In fact, we had discussions about downzoning certain areas. Zoning is either R1, R2, R3, or R4 in residential areas. And in fact, none of the areas were increased in zoning. They were all either remained the same or they were decreased in zoning.
I'll tell you exactly how we can actually fix it and mitigate SB 1818. If we restore height averaging back into our zoning codes, which again Mr. Heilman voted to take out of our zoning codes in 2001, which means that you could only build the average of the shortest and the tallest building on any given block. If we were to do that, then these bonuses, which are mandated by state law, can be mitigated. If I'm on council or when I'm on council, that would be the first thing that I would work with my partners on is restoring height averaging. That's our urban village.
Mr. Ettman?
I'm all for housing that is affordable, and everyone should be able to live here, but not at the expense of our neighborhood. We must put back height averaging, and we must look at the zoning that does allow for buildings that are going to be double the size of what you live in now.
Mr. Block?
I believe in height averaging too on streets, but what we're really talking about here is the Heilman land social engineering of our city, where it was socially engineered that we would mix affordable housing units all over the city and be inclusive. And I would tend to agree that that is a good plan to socially engineer mixed affordable housing units all over the city. The people who are against affordable housing seem to, they're for affordable housing and against overdevelopment.
Oh, excuse me.
Supply
You've
and
run
demand.
out of your time now. Okay, move on now to a question from the audience. which is please give 3 specific items that you will work to achieve within 6 months of election. Be specific was the direction. And this is a 60-second question. I will start with, yes, starts with you.
The first thing that I would do is actually tackle traffic. We must get a handle on our traffic problems. So I would install and update our systems. Right now they are antiquated. Again, looking towards the past rather than towards the future. We can have data-driven collection devices that are much more efficient than the ones that we have now to have our traffic moving east-west through our main corridors. The second thing that I would do is I would look at the neighborhood overlay zone that was implemented in West Hollywood West, and I would try to implement it neighborhood by neighborhood and make sure that each of the neighborhoods feel that they are dictating to developers rather than developers dictating to us what our neighborhood should look like. The third thing that I would do is tackle parking. As we've been talking about, we have a deficit and we need to either build structures or we need to find ways to bring down our meters so that people will move, in and out of parking spaces faster.
Mr. Ettman.
We all have a lot of great ideas in what we need to do with the city, but my #1 goal is to change the culture at City Hall. Stop this city from being a place where 5 people make all the decisions and then it trickles down and we find out after everything's been decided and done what's going to happen. I want to turn it around. I want to give the people the opportunity to have a say in what goes on before it happens. That's first and foremost. Yes, I want to protect Great Hall Long Haul. Yes, I want to change the zoning and create overlay zones. And yes, I want to build more parking. But first and foremost, it's time for a change in leadership at City Hall.
Mr. Block.
First thing I want to do is fix our crosswalks. We're all sitting here, and there's another study going on. The City Council ordered the rapid flashing beacon lights in October 2013, and they never sent them out to bid, and thus we have those short-term pedestrian safety zones, which I advocated, and there has not been one death there. I want to go block by block and fix our crosswalks and make this the safest city to take a walk in. The second thing I want to do is really get to that rent stabilization, aging in place, and push through that idea that a senior or disabled person living on a second floor who becomes disabled or immobile can move to a first floor unit. We have a very good friend, all of us, Pat Dixon, who's in the hospital with back surgery on a second floor, and she might have to move out of the city like Bernice Levin just did because they were on a second floor and they aged. The rent stabilization ordinance is great, but they're time to go and put the cherry on top to protect seniors as they get older so they could stay in West Hollywood. The third thing would be good faith campaign and ethics.
I'm going to ask everybody to keep an eye on the stop sign there. Mr. Heilman.
Thank you. I think in the first 6 months, what I want to accomplish is a long-range plan to bring transit to the city of West Hollywood, working with our supervisor, our state senator, and with the Metro staff to have a plan to make sure West Hollywood is served by the expanding transit in the area. Second thing I want to make sure we do is to go out to bid for construction on our new recreational facility here at West Hollywood Park and our expanded parkland. And the third thing I want to accomplish is to join the city of LA in raising the minimum wage in the city of West Hollywood.
Okay, and now we can start with 30-second responses. Ms. Schenk.
I want to say that in addition, I think that we have to increase all of our systems. City Hall is dysfunctional in terms of if anybody's ever tried to get permitting at City Hall or gone for planning or doing an addition on their house. So it's very important that all of those systems, because it helps actually with seniors, it helps with affordable housing, it helps with parking and traffic. So these are things that all need to be updated. We also need to increase our human services budget.
Okay, Mr. Ettman.
It's time to reform the deputy system. It's time to stop political patronage jobs coming on the 3rd floor. It's time to stop the scandals, sexual scandals, spying scandals, doing politics on the third floor instead of working. That is first and foremost. Let's restore the faith in our government and give the people back City Hall.
Mr. Block.
There's so many things to do that it's hard to narrow them down. But I do think that we need to clean up City Hall. The deputy system is broken, and we can do better at that. I'm going to get back to fixing the crosswalks. Public safety is job one, period. Mr. Hallman has had 30 years and has built the through traffic that we have, crosswalks that we have that are deadly. It's time to fix the crosswalks. There is so much to do. Well, I talk too much.
Mr. Heilman.
Well, I want to say I agree with Cole and Larry. Our deputy system at City Hall does not work. I never was a fan of it, and I think that it is time now, and there's enough political and public support to completely reform what we do. We need people there who are serving the public and not serving political agendas of individual council members, and we need people who are overseen by professionals rather than being overseen by part-time council members.
Okay, Mr. Ettman, we'll start with the next question. The city has frequently used statements of overriding considerations to waive CEQA requirements and thus allow developments to bypass zoning ordinance and general plan guidelines. What policy with respect to these waivers would you pursue if elected, and why?
They end. We don't do statements of overriding consideration. We put the residents first. We look at our streets. We say, if CEQA says that this project is going to contribute to more pollution, more traffic, less parking, we don't approve the project. Just because a developer is given money to city council members doesn't include an overriding consideration. The only time is when the project has such an impact and is such a plus to the community that it negates all of the bad. There are so many projects throughout John Heilman's tenure that a statement of overriding consideration was made. I don't want to live in a metropolis. The statement of overriding consideration will make us a metropolis in the next 10 years.
Mr. Block.
Well, you can't say that it's going to end and then say, but in a certain circumstances, it's worth doing, because that's what a statement of overriding consent is. If we need to build a school in a certain zone because we need to build a school, then we adopt a statement of overriding consent to provide that education building to our community. If we need to build a fire department or a sheriff's station, we need to have a statement of overriding consent so that it fits in with our current zoning codes. But don't forget, all of you who live here do not pay utility taxes. And the reason you don't pay utility taxes is because the commercial developers and the tourists are paying the vast majority of the expenses that we incur, so we enjoy a free utility tax in our city. So things can be different, but a statement of overriding consent is necessary to provide public services.
Mr. Heilman.
Statements of overriding considerations are not generally granted by the city. Most projects that are approved do not need a statement of overriding considerations. As Larry indicated, when you have an environmental impact that cannot be mitigated, you then have to adopt a statement of overriding considerations. I'll give you an example of such a statement. I believe the park expansion that we have here at West Hollywood Park, we had to do a statement of overriding considerations in order to expand the parkland here. It seems strange, but that expansion had an environmental impact. The Pacific Design Center, which some people love and some people don't, but that project needed a statement of overriding considerations in order to be built. And there was a lot of community support when that project came before council.
Developers are buying and selling our city and using statement of overriding considerations to push their projects through. When the public benefits override the environmental impacts, right? That's when we're supposed to use it. But what is a benefit? Have we defined it? It came in front of the Planning Commission recently, and staff said, we're not sure what a public benefit is. It's time for the community to actually decide what a benefit is and whether or not that mitigates the environmental impact that would actually have us use a statement of overriding considerations. I simply do not agree that we have to. The California State Supreme Court said specifically that it is at the discretion of local officials to use these statements of considerations. So it is the council's job to say whether or not we have to. I believe it's the community's job to actually have input into what is a benefit and if it should be mitigated.
Okay, moving on to
If-
the
do I have my?
Yeah.
rebuttals. Yes, moving on to the rebuttals. Now you have 30 seconds for rebuttal, and keep an eye on the stop sign.
If we can't mitigate parking, noise, traffic, then we don't make an override. It's as simple as that. We put the neighborhood and the residents on that block first. We just did an override with Sprouts Farmers Market. Of course something should be at that site. But if that project doesn't work, then we scale it down so that we don't need to do an override consideration.
Mr. Block.
Well, sometimes the case may be that we need to have a statement of overriding consent for a public benefit, and that's why it's in the ordinance to be able to use it. The question of, Heidi was saying, there was not one commercial building that she voted against on the Planning Commission except Sprouts Market when it was 6-1, and she never gave a reason why she voted against that. So it's very, very good in practice to say that you're against something, but the voting record counts. And there's not one commercial building that she voted against besides that Sprouts Market.
I would just agree with Larry in the sense that state law allows for a statement of overriding considerations in those instances where a development presents benefits to the community, but also has an impact on the environment. Anything that is built in an urban area like the city of West Hollywood is going to have an impact on the environment. Most of those impacts we are able to condition and mitigate, but there are times when there will be an impact that cannot be mitigated. And this gives the option to the council to decide whether the benefits outweigh the burden.
Me?
Yes.
Actually, with the Sprouts project, I did give a reason, and I queried the developer's traffic expert who said that it would have a significant impact to traffic on Santa Monica Boulevard in La Cienega, which is already a parking lot. And I said specifically, they said it would have a significant impact to that area. And my no vote was because even though the project itself was an interesting project, that impact to that neighborhood and that crosswalk was not mitigatable, and I said no on behalf of the residents.
Okay,
Just
thank you.
because we can does not mean that we should.
Wait. I think that you've already spoken. No? Okay, let's move on. Now we have a little bit different format. We're going to allow each candidate to ask one other candidate a question, but in a way that ensures that every candidate gets asked a question. So I think since we started with Mr. Ettman last time, we'll start with Mr. Block right now, who can pick the candidate
Oh,
whom we would like to pose a question.
I didn't expect this. This is a tough one.
Wait. That's what I'm about to explain. That's why I said, okay, so you have 1 minute to pose the question. The person you are posing it to has 90 seconds to respond, and then the other two candidates have 30 seconds each to comment. And then we'll move around.
Everyone's been waiting for
Yes,
this.
you do not have to answer, no, you do not have to ask the question to the person to your left. You can ask the question of anybody.
Okay.
And then the next person will choose someone who hasn't been asked a question.
Well, it's my turn?
It's your turn.
I'm sorry I got this question. This is a tough question. But,
And it is being posed to?
and it goes to Heidi. I always consider Heidi a really great friend, and I got annoyed when I get the ballot statement and it says that she has championed Boom and Sizzle, which I'm on the board on, and she has never made an appearance at Boom or Sizzle or has nothing to do with Boom or Sizzle at any meeting. And I'm equally, as my friend, when I get the ballot and I see I got kicked out of the house.
Oh, excuse me. I have to apologize for this. The ground rules here, and I think I explained before, and it was in the candidate agreement, is that this is not supposed to be about campaigning. This is supposed to be about an issue that's of civic interest to the.
Well, I was curious what she did
Well,
to help Boom
yes,
and
and I'm
Sizzle,
saying, okay,
how she promoted
we will- I'll
drug and
tell you what.
alcohol-free events.
You have a chance to think longer, and I will start with Mr. Heilman.
Okay.
I have a ground rules question. I think somebody is videoing, and I thought that wasn't permitted in the auditorium. And I apologize, it's the light that's bothering me, not the videoing. Thank you. So I guess my question is for Larry. This is, you've been a business owner here. This is your second go-round running.
Yes.
Why is it that you want to put yourself out here and have to face all of these questions
Excuse me,
and
this
deal with
doesn't
them?
have to do with the civic issue either.
Well, I guess then I don't understand your limitation.
I'm ready for one.
I think Ben here is going to explain.
Each of you was sent an agreement that was drafted by us and the League of Women Voters to sign prior to participating this evening. This section was in that agreement, and you each signed that agreement. In it, we said that each of you would be allowed to ask a 1-minute question pertaining to the issues facing the city, not campaign-related questions. Each candidate will be allowed a 1.5 minutes to respond, and the remaining candidates will be allowed 30 seconds to comment. Bold letters, not campaign-related questions.
I guess
And
I,
I'm ruling that asking people why they're running is campaign-related.
oh, okay, now I understand your
Okay, so we will
limitation.
move on to, we'll come back
I've
to you,
got
but
one.
we'll move
I've
on.
got one.
Keep
I've got
trying
one.
until someone gets it right.
I've got one. Okay, Mr. Heilman, do you regret voting for the excessive amount of development that has been going on all around the city? That is, it has resulted in the eviction of 700 families that have not all been relocated and instead have exacerbated our traffic problems, severe parking deficit, and have radically changed the historic and unique character of our urban village.
I guess I would disagree entirely with the premise of that statement. When you look at the development that has occurred in the city of West Hollywood, many of the developments have actually been supported by the community. If you look at the amount of affordable housing we've created, it's been substantial. We've actually increased more affordable housing in the city of West Hollywood as a result of development that has occurred. When you look at the development that has occurred at Fountain and La Brea and Santa Monica, I think that's been a net benefit to the community. Target is producing more than 600 jobs for local residents. It's generating a lot of sales tax revenue that we can then invest in public services, including social services, which I agree with you need to be increased. So I don't agree with the premise and the factual statements that you're making as part of that question.
Okay, now, Mr. Edmond and then Mr. Block, you have 30 seconds to offer any comments.
No comment.
Mr. Edmond was first. Okay.
I'd just like to add the overdevelopment from John Heilman. Drive down Sunset Boulevard, drive down Santa Monica Boulevard, Movie Town Plaza, Sunset Millennium. It's one after the next after the next. If you think it's bad now, wait till all these projects get built. And when you see the projects that are in the pipeline, this is a big problem. This needs to change now.
Okay, and you have passed. Is that correct, Mr. Block?
Do I have to ask somebody who didn't get the question yet, right?
What?
Whoever open.
Okay, no, wait.
Here's my question.
No. If we're moving on, the next person is to pose the question is what? Yes, Mr. Edmond. Now, you can pick anyone except Mr. Heilman
What?
to ask a question to.
My question is for Mr. Heilman, and the rules said that I could pick any candidate, so I don't.
I don't,
I have a question for Mr. Heilman.
I think, actually, we've been trying to equalize the amount of time, so it did say any candidate? It did say. Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Heilman. Mr. Heilman, how come when the community, if you care about the residents, when they went to the state and federal government to get Great Hall and Longwell Hall deemed historic, went through the process, and the state and federal government said, these are historic buildings, why did you have no respect for the community and at the next council meeting decide that the wrecking ball should come in 90 days?
I guess we're going to get loaded questions here. I really believe that the East Side deserves the same quality of facilities as the West Side. I think the people on the East Side have been clamoring for additional park space. The Plummer Park Master Plan went through 10 years of studies, community meetings, and there was a lot of community input in support of expanding Plummer Park by removing 2 old buildings in the middle of the park. We were protecting Fiesta Hall, preserving that and actually upgrading it. We were also going to remove those 2 old buildings which have been a source of criminal activity in the park for many years, and we would have been able to expand and pick up about 2 acres of parkland, which the community desperately needs. And I don't regret taking that position, and I still adhere to the position that we need to expand park space. We're looking currently at ways that we could relocate those buildings. Historic structures don't necessarily have to remain in the same place forever. They can be relocated and still be protected under our historic ordinance.
Now, I believe that Ms. Schenk and Mr. Block have a chance to
Well,
comment.
I won't ask you a question, John, because
wait.
everybody...
No, wait.
I don't think that you're Mrs. Schink.
Giving first Ms. Schenk and then you a chance to comment on this question.
First of all, we could have repaired and refurbished Long Hall, Great Hall. You voted to demolish, not to move. So let's be very clear about the voting record and set that straight. As an East Side resident, I see firsthand, I live just about 6 blocks from Plummer Park, and I can tell you that it is a neighborhood-serving park. People use it. We do not want to cut down the old growth trees, demolish the buildings for a subterranean parking lot. Okay? We can have our cake and eat it too there. We can make it a beautiful park by restoring it to its great luster.
Exactly, my answer.
Mr. Block, do you have any comment?
That's exactly right. That's my answer. We lost the money, and when you get $26 million from the state, you got to come up with a plan to be able to use that money, and there was community involvement during those years. But a 20-year-old plan, the 20-year-old plan is too old, and it's time to look at today's current stakeholders to see what everybody wants out of the park. Not just one group or another. What do the stakeholders in the neighborhood want to do to improve Plummer Park?
Okay, now we're back to Mr. Block. Now-
Wait, can I have my rebuttal to the question?
No, it's the other 2 candidates get
A confusing question.
30 seconds to the other 2. That's what was in the rules. So now we're moving on to a question from Mr. Block.
Well, John, you're the incumbent, almost the incumbent. So everybody's going to hit you with the questions, but I'm going to ask the question I rose before ask Cole. How do you propose to increase affordable housing when you speak so vehemently against any development?
I am 100% for housing that's affordable. Our current system does not allow for people to come and live here who are from all walks of life. We need in lieu fees, and we need a proper housing authority that's going to build proper housing, workforce housing for all people. We need to protect our current rental housing stock. The only projects that Mr. Heilman and the council have been approving are luxury housing projects. It's time for the city to put their stake in the game and build housing, not rely on mega developers charging $5,000 an apartment to get a couple of units that are going to be available to anyone in the entire state of California.
Okay, no, wait, now we have
Rebuttal?
comments.
Rebuttal?
Comments from Mr. Howland.
Okay, I think we're getting lost up here, all of us.
Yeah,
Cole's comments are really not true. In terms of building in the city of West Hollywood, we've built a project at Sierra Bonita in Santa Monica. We just finished a project with the Housing Corporation on La Brea. The project at Movietown Plaza that he's so against will have 75 senior housing units. The two projects, the Townscape projects over on the east side, also added another 75 units of permanently affordable housing in the city of West Hollywood.
okay. Ms. Schenk.
The best way for us to protect affordable housing is for us not to evict people in the first place, okay? We should be repairing and refurbishing people's homes. It is the most traumatic thing that can happen to a person, is to be forced out of their house. We could provide low interest rate loans, grants, and tax breaks to property owners. We could also restore height averaging to disincentivize property owners from selling to developers. Let's keep people in their homes so they can age in place in West Hollywood.
I hear a pause. Now, pretty soon I'm going to take it away from the candidate, that time away from the candidate who's speaking, so please hold your pause until the end. Okay, Mr. Heilman.
I have my rebuttal?
Oh, sorry, yes?
Yeah. I asked the question, so I don't
What?
get... No. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. He asked the question. Yeah, you asked the question.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. That's what I thought. Mr. Heilman, now you have 1 minute to ask the question.
I can ask it in a shorter period of time. I guess it's for Heidi, and that is, while you were on the Planning Commission, you voted for a project on Kings Road that is now very controversial. You now say that you don't support it. Can we understand what your position is going to be on development when you vote for something and now say you don't support it?
Well, I could tell you. Does he get time taken away because people clapped? I can tell you that I think that the test of leadership is actually being able to look at new information, not being so grounded in a position that you're intractable and immovable, and actually, when new information is provided for you, that you adapt to that. And that's exactly what happened with the Kings Road project. The Planning Commission was given a small piece of the puzzle when it came to the project itself. Cynthia Blatt actually did a fantastic job on bringing forth an appeal. I then went back to the city staff and asked them to remand it back to the Planning Commission long before this was a hot button issue. They actually said that it had to go in front of council for that to happen. It went in front of council, and that's exactly what happened. It's been remanded back because council said that the planning commissioners did not have all of the information that they needed in order to adjudicate the property properly. That was my position then, and that is my position now. Now that we have Cynthia Blatt's appeal, which is very robust and has given us new information, I believe that the Planning Commission can look at it again and re-vote on it properly with all of the information that we need.
Okay, and now we can take comments. Mr. Edmund?
I think Cynthia Blatt will tell you that I stood with the residents of Kings Road from day one against this project. I did not take a contribution from the developer of this project and then vote for the project and then say it's a bad idea. As a council member, I will look at all the information first and make informed decisions. That's the leadership we need in West Hollywood. Thank you.
Mr. Block?
I think it's completely irresponsible for a candidate for office or an incumbent to take a position on an item that may be pending in front of the city council and making promises for voters and pandering to voters, and that's what's going on. And so the question of Kings Road really is now the affordable housing or an in lieu fee, and an in lieu fee that will take away affordable housing from that street, and that question was not answered properly prior.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question has to do with parking. And we will start, Mr. Block will start. It will be a 1-minute answer with 30-second comments, rebuttals from the other candidates. Current zoning allows for new developments to provide only 1.5 parking spaces for 2-bedroom units, with no requirements for additional guest spaces. In addition, developers can receive concessions to decrease parking as part of the city's bonus program. Do you feel that these and other parking standards should be revisited? If so, and if not, why not? Or if so, why, and if not, why not?
Well, the actual ordinances, the rules as I understand it, is for 1 bedroom, you're allowed 1.5 spaces. For 2 bedrooms, you must have 2 spaces. And for 3 bedrooms, you only need 2 spaces to encourage family development, families to move in. But I would say that in our neighborhood, there's not a lot of families. We probably need that extra 1 bedroom for 1 parking spot in all new developments, especially in the residential zones. And just to quickly go back to previously when I was advocating about the parking, I was talking about the commercial parking. There's plenty of commercial parking. It's our residential zones that really have a problem.
Okay, now we can have 30-second comments, rebuttals from the other candidates. Mr. Heilman?
I'm committed to making sure that new residential development has sufficient parking for the needs of both the residents and the guests. I agree with Larry. I believe the standard under the code is 2 parking spaces for a 2-bedroom unit, not 1.5. Affordable units are entitled to a reduction because most of the people living in affordable units do not have vehicles. Many of them are seniors living on Social Security alone. So it makes sense to reduce the parking standard for permanently affordable units. The one big issue is guest parking that we need to address.
Okay, we're actually on our first round. I think.
Okay.
Did you give them?
That's okay.
Okay, Ms. Schenk.
Yeah, first of all, I disagree with Mr. Heilman. I don't think it's adequate for low-income residents. I don't think it's adequate for high-income residents. We need to change our zoning codes. You were there 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, whenever the last election was, and could have done this. You could have done it 8 months ago. The fact of the matter is we need people on city council, which I will be, that have the will to change our zoning codes once and for all and to make sure that residential properties have adequate parking. In today's world, in a modern economy, you have families that work and everybody's got cars. And we simply do not have enough parking to accommodate not just the people that live there, but also their guests. We must update these codes. We must look at the reality of the current situation of the way families live and adapt to our changing demographics. And to suggest otherwise is just egregious at this point when parking is so limited in our city.
Mr. Edmond.
The one thing that developers want is to build less parking. You know, it's great that Mr. Heilman, who has a 30-year history of doing the opposite of what he says he wants to do now, and that's put the residents first. It's time for new leadership. It's time to look at all of the ordinances. It's time to look at the city zoning laws that allow developers to give less parking, to go build higher, and to put money and greed in front of us.
Okay, so now everybody has 30 seconds for additional comments. Mr. Block.
Well, as far as the parking goes, I think we pretty much have less residents than we've had 30, 40 years ago. We haven't experienced an increase in population, so this whole myth that we have less parking, what we have is greater density. And the greater density is because developers are not allowed to build large apartments. They have to build smaller apartments that increases the density. If we want to change the zoning codes, allow some of these people to build larger apartments that require less parking.
That's enough. Excuse me, that's the wrong way of phrasing it. The stop sign went up. Mr. Heilman.
If you're serious about being supportive of affordable housing, you have to recognize that not everyone does have cars. If you look at the people who live in permanently affordable structures in the city of West Hollywood, many of them do not have vehicles. They simply cannot afford them. And many of those people, many of those buildings were built with a reduction in parking. And what we have seen is that there are available spaces in those buildings, even with a 50% reduction in the permanent affordable housing buildings that have been built, there is adequate parking.
Ms. Schick.
There is just no empirical evidence to support that statement. The fact of the matter is that people that are working 2 or 3 jobs actually do have cars. And to make the assumption, which is a logical fallacy, that they don't have cars, and then to give developers the benefit on the backs of our lower income residents is egregious. I think it should be mandatory that developers take into account parking when it comes to our lower income, our middle income, and our higher income, and provide adequate parking in all new structures that are built in the city from June 3rd on.
Keep an eye. That's going over on your time. Mr. Ettman.
It's very simple. Mr. Heilman and others said, we have greater density. Do you want greater density? I don't want greater density. If I wanted greater density and live in a city like that, I would move downtown LA. So yes, people use their cars. It's insulting to say that low-income people will not have cars. We need parking for everyone. We must change the zoning, and we must keep that first and foremost, taking care of the people who live here first.
Okay. So the next question, we'll start with Mr. Heilman. What is your view of the current minimum wage discussion? Should West Hollywood adopt minimum wage ordinance, and if so, how much? How would this affect businesses in our community? And you have 45 minutes to answer.
Wow. That's a long answer. How much time do I get?
45 seconds. 45 seconds. Everybody gets 45 seconds.
It actually probably takes about 45 hours to answer that question. I support raising the minimum wage. That's something I've been advocating for. Our city staff has been doing a study. We want to make sure that it's done in a responsible way. We reached out to the Chamber of Commerce to look at the impact on business. We want to make sure that people who are working in the city of West Hollywood are able to maintain a normal lifestyle and support themselves. We have to do it in a way that doesn't adversely impact our small business community, doesn't adversely impact our social service agencies, doesn't adversely impact our homeowners associations, but I'm convinced that we can do it, and we can do it in a gradual way. I would support doing what the city of LA has done, which is increasing it to $15 over time.
Ms. Schick.
First of all, I think that this is not about the minimum wage. It's about a living wage. And what a living wage is and what it means in West Hollywood is different than it is in other cities. We need to know exactly what a living wage should be for West Hollywood before we set a price. We do have to counterbalance that with our small businesses. And actually in LA, which they just voted on, they're phasing it in, and they're actually making it exempt for businesses, let's say with under 25 employees. But how sad is it that we have to follow instead of lead? Prior councils could have led on a living wage. That's why we need new leadership in West Hollywood, because it's time for West Hollywood to be on top and in front of these kind of issues instead of waiting for other cities to beat us to the punch.
Everyone who works in the city of West Hollywood should be able to live in the city of West Hollywood. So yes, we need a living wage. We also have to be compassionate to people. we also have to be compassionate to our small businesses. Mr. Heilman supports a living wage, but he doesn't support organized labor. This building that we're here today, not 1 ounce of union labor was involved in it. So if you want a living wage, then let's support union workers as well.
Mr. Block.
Well, I think I'm the only one on this dais who signs a payroll check every 2 weeks for my employees, right? And I figured out that the increase in the minimum wage is going to cost me $2,800 a month. 2 employees, $2 to $3 an hour, 16 hours a day. So it's a pretty difficult thing to absorb, but at the Chamber of Commerce meetings, we all talked about and we all agreed that there needs to be an increase in the minimum wage. It's definite. The difference is, how do we mitigate the problems that small businesses will face so we don't lose our mom and pops and we don't cut jobs? Because my 2 people would go down 1 person. $3,000 a month difference is a lot. And my neighbors, we've all talked about it, they would all let people go to or man their registers themselves. So it's
Okay,
tough, but we can we have to find mitigating factors.
Okay, now we have 30 seconds each to continue the discussion. Mr. Heilman.
I do want to respond. I did lead on this issue. I'm the one who brought forth the item to increase the minimum wage in the city of West Hollywood, and none of the other candidates were there to support it. I'm also the one who brought forth the ordinance to update our living wage ordinance for those who contract with the city of West Hollywood. And contrary to the assertions by my colleagues up here, I'm the candidate that was endorsed recently by the County Federation of Labor. I'm also the one that was endorsed by AFSCME, the City Hall Union.
There was a vote that you took, Mr. Heilman, in the 1990s that actually made us a non-union city. It was to actually break up collective organizing, which actually undermines union, the ability for unions to be able to work together as opposed to individuals. So to say that you are behind the unions, and the LA County Democratic Party came to no consensus or no endorsement in this last election, specifically on this issue when it comes to unions in this city.
Mr. Heilman, you may have a list of endorsements because you've been entrenched for 30 years, and that's what happens when people are entrenched for 30 years. But your record is clear. There's no union labor in West Hollywood.
Mr. Cole-Ettman, you said you would get rid of the deputy system, but you are for unions. It's a union. How would you do that?
Okay.
Should have never been a
well,
union in the first place. Mr. Heilman approved that.
Excuse me. Okay.
Who approves a 5-person union?
Wait, you have a chance at the very end to do all the rebuttals you can fit into 1 minute. Okay, so we're moving on to question 13. This is an audience question, and we'll start with Ms. Schenk. It's a 60-second response for everybody, and then 30 seconds rebuttal afterwards, or discussion afterwards. The question is, the city's Robo Garage will open before the year is out. Do you advocate additional investments like this in the city? Please explain your answer.
Well, I think it was a very expensive garage, and I think that we do need parking structures. There's no doubt. I mean, we've been talking about parking all night, and there's clearly a need, although I guess there are some people on this dais that disagree with that. But I think that the residents of this community know that we need more parking. As I've said before, we can't do it at the expense of old-growth trees or community-serving parks, but there are places where we could find a place to put and build structures for parking, and like Beverly Hills, for instance, give 2 hours free. That would certainly help our small businesses. It would take the pressure off of our streets. So I do advocate for more parking structures. I don't think that I would spend the type of money that was spent on the structure that they spent. I think it could have been better spent on human services and other needs that our residents have. However, I think that more parking is always going to be better for our city in the future.
Mr. Ettman.
Being on the city council means making tough choices. You can make a choice to spend $18 million on an automated parking garage, or when the market was down, the real estate market was down, the city could have bought property on the boulevard and built maximum capacity garages. The city owned the building that now has the Hancock Lofts. That could have been a full capacity garage, but instead the developers got their hands in there first. So we do need parking. We do need to make tough choices, and we need to build garages where they matter, where people come to visit us.
Mr. Block.
Being on the city council means that you have to understand economics. This robo garage cost us nothing. We have a AAA bond rating, and we were able to issue bonds that will be serviced by the revenues generated from that garage, and eventually own that asset on our books for free. And that's how the robo garage is financed, with bonds, and that's what having a good AAA bond rating can do for us. It allows us to invest in parking and invest in infrastructure with bonds that have recurring revenues to pay back those bonds and build and make it an asset of the city. And in Mid-City, that garage, if you've traveled to the Far East, and I have traveled to the Far East tens of times, this is the way of life in the Far East, the way in Korea and China, robo garage, and it serves a big purpose in dense areas.
Mr. Howman.
Land is in short supply in the city of West Hollywood, and no one is making any more land. Parking is very expensive to build. The whole point of the automated structure was to be able to get more parking in a very small area. And yes, it is expensive, but it's an investment in our future. And I believe that it's going to be very successful when it's opened, and I think it'll give us a roadmap for doing that in other areas of the city where we have a very small portion of land, but we can get more cars in by automating it. It reduces the size that's needed, it reduces the footprint needed for vehicles to turn around. And so I support what we did, and I look forward to us doing it in other locations to try to address some of the parking shortages in our community.
Okay, Ms. Schenk, 30 seconds.
Once again, I think we could have accomplished the same thing for less money and taken the remainder of that money and used it in better ways to meet our community's needs. One of the most important things that we as city council members have to make is how to spend our money. So even if we have money in the kitty, we don't want to spend it in a way that may be foolish. We want to spend it in a way that it will benefit the city. So we could have had, no one's debating whether or not we needed a parking garage. It's just an $18 million parking garage was too expensive.
Mr. Ettman.
So we're told that we're progressive and we're building the first automated parking garage on the west side. If we're going to be progressive and we're going to have firsts, let's have progressive campaign finance laws. Let's stop the developers from giving money directly to city council candidates. Let's look at cities like San Francisco and make things transparent so that we don't sit here and have to have our future decided by special interests. That's where we need to be progressive.
Mr. Block.
We did not write a check for $18 million for that robo garage. We didn't write any check. It was financed through bonds, and it will be paid for through recurring revenues that come in, and we will own that asset. And that's the way municipal governments finance their buildings, with good credit ratings. So this idea that we spend too much on and that we're broke because we financed the robo garage, it is not true. The robo garage was financed through bonds, through our AAA rating, and we can continue to build our infrastructure in the same way without it costing us a fortune.
Mr. Heilman.
Do I get to answer again? I thought I did already. I keep getting lost up here.
Yeah, you get another chance.
Great. I agree with Larry. When you look at the parking structure that we built here, both the parking structure for the library and the parking structure behind this building, that parking structure is largely paying for itself because of nighttime revenues, people who are parking here. And I really think that we need to look at this as a model in other parts of the city where the people who are coming to our clubs and our restaurants will eventually pay for those structures, and they'll be long-term assets for the community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I sense that there are certain issues that keep reoccurring. Okay, now we have the next question, where we'll start with Mr. Edmond. West Hollywood has gone further than the state's density bonus law by requiring all developments of 10 or more units to include affordable units. This allows an increase in the size and density of the project. Do you believe West Hollywood's special inclusionary zoning requirements over and above the state-mandated density bonus are in the best interest of the community? And if not, what kind of adjustments do you feel should be made? So this is 1 minute answer, and then everyone will have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
I feel like we answered this question before, but again, it's simple. We cannot put the residents who live on our streets in a position where the place that's going to be built next to them is double the size of their place. It changes the face of the community. If you look around, our community is changing. Sunset Boulevard will look completely different a year from now and 2 years from now. Santa Monica Boulevard is going to be even more congested. So no, I don't agree with additional bonuses. I don't agree that we need to be able to build a property that's double the size of the one that's next to it. Height averaging stops that. The height averaging that John Heilman took away would keep the character of the neighborhood. So regardless of the density bonus, you could not build a 4-story project when everywhere else on the street is 1 or 2 stories.
Mr. Block.
That goes back to the question I asked earlier. How can we have more affordable housing if we're not for development? There's some sort of thing where we say, I'm here, but you can't come. I want to protect my home, but no more people should come here. Property owners have rights. They have rights to build on that property within the zoning codes. And they can build up to 90% as mandated by the state. We can tweak it and say 1 parking spot for 1 space, and we could get rid of a density bonus, but know that that's going to be at the expense of affordable housing. The best way to go is to create the in lieu fee and ask West Hollywood Housing Corporation so that those affordable housing units are built off-site, but that they get built. So let's collect the money, allow in lieu fees, and continue to build affordable housing and protect our local neighborhoods at the same time.
Mr. Heilman.
I support our inclusionary housing ordinance. It's what has resulted in those 75 units at Movie-Town Plaza that will be permanently affordable housing for seniors in this city. I support inclusionary housing, and I disagree with Cole. It doesn't result in a doubling of the size of the property or doubling of the height. It does allow for an increase in density to take into account that additional units are being included. The whole point of the inclusionary housing ordinance is to mandate that developers who are developing in the city of West Hollywood replace the units that they are demolishing, or at least include housing that is permanently affordable, so that West Hollywood remains an economically diverse community where all people in the community have an opportunity to afford to live here.
The problem is that we're not replacing. When we demolish, we do not, it's not 1 for 1. It's not 20 people are evicted and 20 people come back. That's the fuzzy math that I was talking about before. The best way for us to keep people in their homes is to keep people in their homes. Let's repair and refurbish our existing stock, and much of it does need to be. But let's keep them in their homes, because it is very traumatic to move seniors and force them out of their homes, bulldoze it, 20 people get evicted, and maybe 3 come back in, and they get put on a list. Some of them are falling through the cracks. Where are the 17 other people going? And this is just an example. So, of course, inclusionary housing is important, but rather we can keep people in their homes. So by restoring height averaging, that takes care of SB 1818, but what we need to do is make sure that we are not a concrete jungle. We can't do it at the expense of what our city looks and feels like.
Okay,
we have to
now-
take care of the residents that are here.
Your time's up. We'll start with Mr. Edmond again for 30-second comment. So rebuttal.
If you live on a block that has single-family homes and duplexes, and you're zoned R3B, like some of you are, with the density bonus, you can have a 4-story building next door to you. That is a fact. These in lieu fees are going to start happening more and more. The state has said that if you displace affordable housing units, then you have to make up for them, or you don't get the density bonus. We have to be progressive. We have to do everything possible to make sure the code puts residents first.
Mr. Block.
What Heidi's talking about in the Ellis Act is a state-mandated law, and the big fault that we have in our city is we really don't have transitional housing. So if we had transitional housing, we would be able to help those residents who are forced out of their units. So that would be the one thing that I would have to advocate first, that has been a little hole in our glitch is that we don't have transitional housing to help our tenants when they are evicted through the Ellis Act, and to lobby the state to get rid of the Ellis Act.
One of the big problems that we face in the city is the Ellis Act. The Ellis Act allows landowners, property owners, apartment owners to go out of the rental business, and they can then evict all of the tenants in that property, and they can leave the building sit vacant. They can also apply to have that building demolished. And unfortunately, we as a city cannot prevent the landlord from going out of the rental business. It is a problem, and it has been a problem, and it continues to be a problem. And that's why we've been lobbying the state legislature to try to change it.
Ms. Schenk.
Well, again, it is state law, but there's things that we could do to mitigate it. We can incentivize property owners from not selling to developers by giving them low interest rate loans, grants, and tax breaks to keep their residents in their homes. We can also disincentivize by restoring height averaging. Developers are not going to want to buy a building if they can't build it, 6 stories high, but rather they can only do it 2 stories high. So we can actually try and address it. The problem is that the prevailing attitude is, well, this is good enough, and I say that we can do better.
Okay, moving on to the next question, and we'll start with Mr. Block. This will be 1-minute answer for everybody, again with 30-second rebuttal. Much of West Hollywood's multifamily properties are low density with off-street parking and many iconic architectural features. These rent-stabilized properties provide housing for the middle class. Facing increased costs and diminishing returns, many property owners are choosing to sell to developers, resulting in a decrease in rent-stabilized units and forcing long-term residents out of West Hollywood. Do you see this as a problem? And if so, how would you incentivize landlords to maintain our aging housing stock?
This question is so fascinating because there's so much talk about affordable housing and affordable housing and affordable housing, and we're talking about 600 units in the city. And I don't believe the context of all the questions that are asked about affordable housing is really the basis of what everybody's passions are. Everybody's passions are housing that's affordable, and how do we have housing that's affordable in this city versus the affordable housing units that go to just the low income or very low income persons. Incentives for landlords there are a few incentives for landlords. One of them, to improve the housing stock, would be to de-incentivize the development of that building. One way I've advocated is put a 10% tax on all large-scale developments to be put into a fund to fund mass transit. And if we had that going on right now with $2.5 billion in construction going on in the city would have $250 million for our mass transit system to help alleviate traffic.
Ms. Schenk.
To me?
No, you started, right?
No. Mr. Block started. I think you're to me.
Mr. Block started, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's Ms. Schenk's right now.
No, that goes to
Goes to me, I think, next.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said,
So I'm not the only one getting confused by the
oh, I'm
format.
sorry, I thought, sorry, I was here.
I think that there are issues with landlords. First of all, landlords, because of vacancy decontrol, many of them are now getting market rents for at least some of the units. We don't want to incentivize bad landlords who haven't invested in their property and have just taken all of the equity out. But I do think we need to be creating targeted opportunities to partner with the city. What I would really favor is working with local banks, developing low-interest loan programs, not only for apartment owners, but for some of our older condo associations as well, so that those multifamily buildings can get low-interest loans to make targeted improvements. Improvements to their roofing, improvements to their environment, like initiating solar. I think we also as a city can look at opportunities where we provide expertise or consult with people who bring in expertise for these multifamily owners.
Ms. Schenk.
Well, first of all, I just have to say then, why didn't you? So that's the first question I have. But again, I'll say this, and I've been saying it all night. The best way to keep people in their homes is to repair and refurbish. And the city can get deeply involved with that. We could provide low interest rate loans to incentivize property owners and grants and tax breaks so that they won't want to sell and that these buildings would then be demolished. We can also restore height averaging, again, to disincentivize property owners from selling. I think there's another question that hasn't really been asked but needs to get addressed, which is Airbnb. That is also taking away from our affordable housing units. We have sort of an underground economy that's operating in the shadows, and as a councilwoman, I would really suggest that we start looking at this immediately, because these rental units are actually being rented out to people on a weekend, which is not even allowed. It's an
Mr. Etman.
It's an important question, though, to talk about Airbnb.
We have to go back to the issue at hand. It's the capacity. It's the zoning. Why do you think all these developers are coming to West Hollywood? Because John Heilman and the City Council has given them a blank slate. They've made the zoning possible so that a landlord, of course, will sell their building, because in West Hollywood you can build bigger, louder, faster, thanks to our City Council. When we address that, then we'll fix this problem.
Okay. Yes, now we start
Well, John,
30-second responses.
I wish you had all that power to do all that, because I just don't see that it's John Heilman's fault that,
I think they're running together now.
you know, yeah. Because, excuse me, can I get my time back there? You know, the affordable housing, we need affordable housing in this city, and it has to be built in order to have affordable housing, and that's all that is the most important thing for our residents, that we do have affordable housing for low income, and they don't have to move out of the city.
Okay, Mr. Heilman.
Development is going to occur regardless of who gets elected to the city council. And anyone who's promising you that there's not going to be any development in the city is making a false promise to you. There are property owners who have rights to develop their property, and there's nothing that anyone on the council can do to prohibit that. I do think that we can look at ordinance changes, we can look at Airbnb, which we already have been doing, but this idea that no development is ever going to occur, or that the rules are stacked to encourage development, is just not true.
Ms. Schenk.
I just want to go on the record and saying that I never said that I was anti-development. It's the quality and the tenor of the development that matters. It's the aesthetics, it's the density, it's the size, it's the feel. We had a very successful experience doing a neighborhood overlay zone with West Hollywood West, whereby, and this is where the city can get involved, whereby the citizens, the residents, we are dictating to developers rather than developers dictating to us what our neighborhood should look like. We need to reinstate that all over the city so that each of our unique neighborhoods have a neighborhood overlay zone that protects the unique character of their neighborhoods, period.
Mr. Etman.
I'm happy that Ms. Schenk has joined the club after being a planning commissioner and voting for all those projects. So thank you very much.
I never said I was anti-development.
Mr. Block.
I think I don't know, do I still go again?
I think
I
we're-
answered twice.
Yes, that's right. Okay. This will be our last question. So starting with Mr. Heilman. West Hollywood funds homeless services through PATH, yet we see long-term homelessness on our streets. Many of the people involved have mental health addiction, and other medical issues. How can the city work to be more effective in meeting the needs of the homeless?
I think it's a challenge, and it's a challenge that every city in Southern California faces. One of the things that we do is we do fund a shelter. We fund beds at that shelter. We fund outreach workers. But what you've noted in the question is that a lot of the long-term homeless in West Hollywood have additional problems. They have mental health problems. They have substance abuse problems. We need to have outreach workers who are medically trained as well, who can provide services right on the street to people. We also need to be looking, as we did in the project on La Brea, of creating some opportunities for some of the new affordable units to be for people who are at risk of homelessness or who are on the street. And some of the units in that project were designed for, particularly for LGBT youth who were on the street and who were homeless and were being served by the Lesbian and Gay Community Services Center.
Ms. Schenk.
Well, first of all, as a Human Services Commissioner, this was a very big issue for me. And actually, I went to City Council asking them for more funds to be allocated to the Human Services Department so that we could actually do the types of things that Mr. Heilman is talking about, but we were rejected. I think that the first thing that I would do is actually increase our Human Services Department to meet the needs of our homeless population and their different commensurate issues that they have, whether it's drug addiction or mental issues, or whether it is that they're LGBT youth getting off a bus from Oklahoma and looking for a bed or a place to sleep. I also think that we can coordinate resources within the county. New directions for veterans, which are a huge part of the homeless population in our county, the Genesee Center for battered women, the Los Angeles Youth Network for LGBT youth. We need to build bridges in partnerships with additional agencies outside of the ones that we're working with already.
Mr. Etman.
Well, helping with the homeless requires the city taking a stand. It requires the city stepping up. We can't wait for the county to help us with our homeless issue. In the city of West Hollywood, if a homeless person says that I live here, then that homeless person is entitled to services. But we contract it out like we contract everything else out. And we contract things out because it's big money and big business. We need a full-time West Hollywood staffer to work directly with the homeless. They need somebody that they can call their own. We have to do this with the homeless. We have to do this with so many other things in our city. With HIV prevention, why do we send our residents all the way to the Gay and Lesbian Center in Hollywood? Why don't we have a place of our own here in West Hollywood? We need to stop contracting things out, and if we're going to be progressive, let's be progressive and put services here in West Hollywood.
Mr. Block.
That's the way government works. Government is not a socialist. We're not a socialist government where we're going to give money to landlords for affordable housing and we're going to give things away. We can only provide incentives. And in essence, with the homeless, we provide incentives and we pay PATH. We have 14 beds at PATH. Any West Hollywood resident, they come to West Hollywood because you know that if you're in West Hollywood, and the homeless know that if you're in West Hollywood, you get a bed at PATH any night. And I open my store every Sunday morning, and there's a homeless guy on my street, and if you see a homeless person, you're doing them a favor. Call the sheriff will escort them to the homeless shelter, they'll get food, they'll get a bed, they'll be put into a program if they're on drugs, they'll be given a drug program, and they'll be admitted and serviced until they can get on their feet. We have these programs. We have fantastic social services programs, and the last thing I would say is our social services program with an increasing budget has declined a little bit, and we could raise it a little bit more.
Heilman.
We contract with service providers because they have greater expertise and they oftentimes bring additional resources. That's why we contract with a homeless services agency. That's why we contract with the sheriffs. That's why we contract with Jewish Family Services to operate our senior center and our center for disabled residents. That's why we contract with AIDS Project Los Angeles, because those organizations have expertise, they have additional resources that they bring to serve our community. I agree that we need to support the homeless individuals who are in the city, and I would like to expand that service.
Ms. Schenk.
I believe, again, as I said before, that we need to increase our human services, the funding to our human services department. We simply are not meeting the needs of our residents, and we have to allocate more monies. The partnerships that we have with our agencies are working well, but I sat on that commission for years and years, and they were on our knees to us saying, please, we need more money. We are simply not meeting the needs. And to suggest otherwise is just an untruth. We need to increase that budget. We have the monies to do that, and
Bradman.
we have to take care of those people.
John Heilman talks about who we contract with the city. We contract with Athens Services. Athens Services got a $150 million 15-year no-bid renewal contract. Why? If you look at the money and you see where the money went, it came from special interests. It came from Athens to city council candidates. It went to council members. It went to council members' charities. That's a problem. This debate is very important, but most importantly is changing the culture at City Hall, getting the money out of City Hall.
Mr. Block.
The question of, no comment, no comment.
Okay.
I don't want to repeat myself.
Well, thank you all. That's the last question. So now we will proceed to closing statements, and we will go in reverse order. So we will start with Mr. Heilman, move in this direction, and everybody has 60 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you for moderating tonight, and thank you for everyone who's here tonight. I love the city of West Hollywood. People ask me why, after 30 years, would I subject myself to the rigors of another campaign, and it was because I really love the community. I love all that we've accomplished. We're a very well-run city. We have a AAA bond rating. We have a lot of money in reserves. We have progressive LGBT policies. We have great social services. Can we make improvements to what we do? Absolutely, and I'm committed to making improvements. That's why I want to try to bring transit here. That's why I'm so excited about the new recreation facility here. That's why I'm really excited about developing design guidelines in residential neighborhoods. That's why I'm excited about the future of the city of West Hollywood. I really appreciate everything that we've accomplished, but I know that we have great things in our future, and I look forward to working with everyone in the community and everyone on the council to bring those great things to the fruition. Thank you.
Mr. Block.
Thank you all. I'd like to thank everybody, and especially the 1,033 people who voted for me in the last election on their ballots. I hope you can continue to support me. John Heilman's service to this community is second to none. We all owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude for his service. And sometimes it takes an out-of-the-box new approach to come in and look at some of the things that we've done great and even do them better. John Heilman may have done a great job building this city, but he didn't fix the crosswalks. John Heilman may have built a great LGBT city, but he didn't put the cherry on the top, our rainbow flag, our new city flag that we're so proud of as a city to represent universal globally. We may have a great rate stabilization ordinance that he thought of, but we didn't think of what happens when a senior has to move age in place from a second floor to a first floor because they're too old to live in West Hollywood. There are many, many issues at hand for the city. I love this city. I've been here for 30 years. I'm a local business owner, and I look forward to serving you, and I ask for your vote on June 2nd.
Mr. Ettman.
Too many good people have worked too hard and too long to build this city that we love today. And for the city council to auction off 30 years of progress to out-of-town developers and special interests, it's just not acceptable. Are you tired of being ignored at City Hall? I know I am. I sit as Public Facilities Commissioner. I feel like a rubber stamp. I'd like to change that. City Hall is consumed by scandals, sexual scandals, eavesdropping scandals, political scandals. This is all under the watch of Mr. Heilman. Enough is enough. Working together, we can protect our neighborhoods, our parks, and build housing that's affordable for everybody. This election day, let's kick the special interests out of City Hall. Let them know that their time is up. Our city is not for sale. You, the voters, sent a message loud and clear in the last election. Let's continue the momentum and elect new independent leadership. Make no mistake, I will only be beholden to the people and the residents of the city of West Hollywood. Put you first. Join me on June 2nd and vote Cole Ettman.
Well, I want to thank you again to our moderator, Elizabeth Ralston, and to the West Hollywood Neighborhoods Association for making this forum possible. And I also want to thank everyone on this stage. Running for office is not easy, and I think it's clear that everybody up here loves our city. But this election is not about loving our city. It's about who has the solutions and the qualifications to take the city forward and who can be an innovative and independent voice on council. Our campaign is a true grassroots campaign. I've taken $0 from developers. We've built our support by going door to door, having conversations with neighbors. And the one thing I hear over and over again is, I want a city council that listens to us. We need to continue the momentum from the last election, but we can only do it together. I have the community support and the backing of real people, not the development special interests that see our community as something to buy and sell. So I humbly ask for your vote on June 2nd. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for a really exciting and interesting evening. I, first of all, want to thank so very much the League of Women Voters, Elizabeth, and our time police, Thea Brodkin and Chrissy Avila. I'd like to thank again the city for letting us use this space and for broadcasting this evening's event. Remember, you can go to YouTube, to the city's channel, and onto the city's website to see this in reruns. I'd also like to again thank the Beverly Hills Greater Los Angeles Association of Realtors. They really do help pay for all of the things that we need to do this. And thank you to our candidates. We're all very passionate about our city, and we love their passion. And last but not least, thanks to all of our neighbors, our neighborhood associations, and everyone who was involved in helping put together tonight's and every night's activities throughout our city. Good night, everybody. Oh, remember to get your parking validated if you need to in the back left corner. Thank you.